Hello, homebrewed Christianity listeners, this is Trip. And on this episode, you are going to hear Brian McLaren talk with the Bo Daddy about an upcoming, exciting, academic, justice-packed ecological extravaganza. That would be the Seizing an Alternative Conference, June 4th to 7th of the year 2015 in Claremont, California. That would be Los Angeles. We're inviting you to come out and join the Pando Populus excitement, the International Whitehead Conference, the International Conference of the Ecological Civilization. Those are all the different groups that are putting this on. There will be over 1,000 different presenters from all over the place in Claremont, June 4th to 7th. And we hope you come out and join us. And here's why. If you're local, you can come all day Saturday. There's like a really cheap all-day Saturday ticket. And on it, one of the things that's going to happen is a session that Brian McLaren and I lead in the afternoon. And then that night is going to be the Homebrewed Christianity podcast on Saturday night during the conference. It's going to blow your mind. Yeah, I can't even tell you about all the process excitement that's going to be there. But let me tell you who's going to be at this event. Bill McKibben, Rosemary Radford Ruther, Marjorie Suhaki, John Cobb, David Ray Griffin, Catherine Keller, Tom Ord, Philip Clayton, Monica A. Coleman. Brian McLaren and I are doing a session. Bruce Epperly, Joseph Bracken. Oh man, if I went through the list, it would blow your mind. But let's say you've never really got a grasp of process thought before. You can go to the conference and during it take a introduction to process theology with Gary Dorian of Union Theological Seminary. I want to go to that. In fact, if you are going to come, I will give you a recorder to record it. Anyway, June 4th to 7th, Seizing an Alternative in Claremont. Come on out. There's so much going on at it, it's hard to explain. So just head over to the homepage and you can click over, see the schedule, see the excitement. But know that you can join Brian McLaren and I's track, hanging out with all the podcast peeps that are going to be there and discuss what Christianity is going to look like as it comes to evolve and expand its theological imagination in light of the impending ecological crisis. Anyway, thank you, Pando, for sponsoring this podcast. Anyway, I just want to say thanks. Thanks for listening. You're going to enjoy Brian and Bo's talking, but first I just want to say that I have really enjoyed all the feedback from so many of you about the last month and us using the emailing list. I've gotten 100 emails of people going, thanks for using the email list. I didn't miss an episode. I knew who you interviewed. It's been great. We have over 50 people that have joined the Homebrewed Christianity community, which is just awesome. Bo and I greatly appreciate it. And you can join it too. Just go to the website and you can find out about it. And all of you that are elders or bishops, or you've already joined the summer school class, coming up soon is our summer school class that Bo and I are doing. It's a theology class called Living Options in Christian Theology. And it will thematically look at different questions and schools of thought that are still around and kicking. So it's kind of an introductory survey to all sorts of theological excitement that you're more than welcome to join. Just head to homebrewedchristianity.com and do me a favor. Share this episode on the Twitter, on the Facebook. If you could go to Stitcher, the greatest podcast app, or go to iTunes and review us, give us 5 stars, then tell us we're horrible in the comments. That's fine. But review this, share it, and then we get to keep sharing the brew. You know what I'm saying? It's like we're friends and stuff. We, put those interviews together. We edit it all down, deliver it to you. And then you just give us a little review. Just give us a little share. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Anyway, head over to homebrewchristianity.com. You can find the links. You can hit the SpeakPipe button. Leave us a call. Leave us a message, and we talk more about it. Especially if you're coming out to California for the Seizing an Alternative Conference. Let us know so we can connect, because there may or may not be a little special activity that takes place the Thursday after registration, before it officially starts, that all the homebrewed Christianity-related people will want to participate in. All right? All right. Here's Brian. Here's Bo. It's fun. Boom, shakalaka, laka, laka.
Homebrewed Christianity. This is Bo Sanders, and I am thrilled to be on the other end of the line from my friend Brian McLaren. Brian, welcome back to the show.
It's always great to be with you at Homebrewed.
Do you remember the second half this time?
Homebrewed Christianity?
Exactly. So this is, for those who missed that joke, this is the Homebrewed Christianity stream we're on right now. If you are not subscribed to the Theology Nerd Throwdown, you missed Brian's latest appearance on the show when we were in Phoenix. We did a live show, and he came as one of our guests, and it was hilarious. And acted like he could not remember the name of the show, which got a big laugh. Brian, we're going to see you again in just a couple weeks, and so I thought I'd get you on the phone and ask you about a whole bunch of stuff you have been investing your time and energy into.
Great.
So you're coming back to Claremont, California. Tell us why.
Well, I mean, it's such a beautiful place. I'm always glad to be there, but I'm really excited to be part of this big conference called Seizing an Alternative that will be there from June 4th to June 8th. And it's I think, a historically important gathering of people from all walks of life, scholars to just regular folks, to talk about finding an alternative way to organize our civilization that doesn't heat up our planet and raise our sea levels and create catastrophe. So that's a pretty important reason to get together.
Yeah, so it's called Seizing an Alternative Towards an Ecological Civilization, and it's put on in conjunction with Pando Populus, which is neither an animal nor a political stance. It's actually, they're using the metaphor of the largest living organism, this tree that has shoots that come up but is all rooted together below the surface.
Yes.
And it's an appropriate, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I was probably going to say what you're going to say. It's an appropriate image for a lot of reasons, but the largest living thing in the world, a single living organism, is a huge grove of aspen trees. And it's actually one huge organism that shoots up as all these different trees, deeply connected by roots. And it's a good metaphor for this gathering because a lot of conferences, they have a bunch of lectures. But what they're trying to do with this conference is have lectures and discussions that all are integrated. And so everyone will have a sense that the one little part that they're most deeply involved with is actually deeply connected with all the other parts and conversations that are going on. Because when you're imagining something as monumental and epical as trying to imagine an ecological civilization, you know, that's a bigger task than any single one of us can hold together in our mind, perhaps. But if we can be aware that we each have a little part to play and we can contribute to something bigger, you know, that's a good thing.
Yeah, that's a beautiful image. Two things about this conference really caught my attention. The first is on their front page of pandopopulus.com, there's a quote by John Cobb, who, as you know, we're big fans of around here. And he says, at this point, we either rethink everything or we give up hope. So we're rethinking.
Yeah.
And there's just a stark and desperate, in all of the verbiage around this conference, there's a real intensity and a seriousness. This is not dreamy. This is life on the ground.
Yeah, you know, I'll tell you something interesting. I wrote a book some years ago called Everything Must Change, and the book was about global crises, and that's why, you know, that quote from John Cobb, you know, resonates with me. When I wrote this book, I wrote this book with two questions, not answers, but two questions to start, and the questions were, what are the biggest problems in the world? In other words, you take your car in and you might know you need new tires, but if the head gasket's bad, that's a problem of a whole different order. So what are the biggest problems that we face? And then as a Christian, I wanted to ask the question, what does the message of Jesus say to those problems? So, and at one point in my research, I remember this guy said to me, he said, how's your research going? And I said, I can't tell you how overwhelmed I am. Like, I'm way beyond depressed. I'm almost terrorized when I really start to understand the complexity of problems we face. And he said, well, that's a good sign. He said, if you're not on the verge of despair, you don't understand the gravity of the problem. but there is a sense that, I'm in some ways I'm glad that not everybody thinks about this as intensely as some of us do, because, we still need people to, check out our groceries at the grocery store. But you also get the sense that more and more of us do need to try to understand the gravity of the problems we face, especially at the intersection of ecology and economy. And you and I would say, and theology, because I think theology, properly understood, is about ecology and economy, among other things. So, those of us who are starting to learn more about this, we realize, we want to face this with the seriousness it deserves, without becoming overwhelmed. But we want to, we want to stay in the mode of saying we've got to do everything we possibly can. And I think that's where faith comes in, because, there are times the situation, when you got the Egyptian army chasing you from behind and a huge sea in front of you that's showing no signs of parting, it takes some faith to not give up.
Yeah. So the other thing that caught my attention about this conference is you used the analogy of the aspen grove. People are really going to have to, it's almost not fair to call it a conference per se, to understand how expansive this project is. So there are 12 sections, and within each section, there are 6 to 7 tracks.
Yeah.
Now that means that there are going to be literally over 1,000 presenters there.
Yeah.
Just the presenters. It is a massive involvement. So let me read through some of these sections, and then we'll talk about the track inside the section that you and Tripp are working on. So section 1 is the threatening catastrophe and responding now. Section 2 is an alternative vision, the philosophy of Alfred North Whitehead. Section 3 is alienation from nature, how it arose. Section 4, re-envisioning nature, re-envisioning science. Section 5 is ecological civilization. Section 6, reimagining and reinventing the wisdom traditions, world loyalty. And that's the section you're in, but we'll get to your track in a minute. Section 7, reimagining and reinventing the wisdom traditions, spirituality. Section 8, reimagining and reinventing education. Section 9, reimagining and reinventing bodily spiritual health. Section 10, reimagining and reinventing societies and social thought. Section 11, reimagining and reinventing culture. Section 12, the transformative power of art. So as if that weren't enough, if you can even imagine going to a conference where those were the 12 tracks, which I can't.
That's right.
Inside each of those sections are 6 to 7 tracks. So inside reimagining and reinventing the wisdom traditions, world loyalty, and maybe you can tell us why it's called world loyalty, you and Tripp are heading up a new way for a new day. So tell us what that's going to look like.
Okay. Well, first of all, let me say you're right. This is a mammoth thing that's going to happen. Here's a way to think about it. If you imagine the kind of education a person gets with 4 years of a bachelor's degree and 2 or 3 years of a master's degree and 3 or 4 years of a doctorate, imagine all of that education happening in one weekend in one place. It's kind of what they've planned, this huge a gathering of learning. And there won't just be one student taking that all in, but part of, I think, the consciousness behind this is that if this learning is shared by a large group of people, and I think there are going to be ways that the learning is preserved for others afterwards, but if people just participate in this monumental 4 or 5 day experience of learning, that's going to have an effect. It's how they say an earthquake happens or a volcano happens, and it actually shakes the earth on its axis a little bit. I think they're hoping that this creates a bit of shaking in the sum total of human consciousness, if you could say it that way. So it really is amazing. The phrase world loyalty comes from a statement from the philosopher Whitehead, who said that religion is world loyalty. And what he was, a simple way to say what he meant by that statement, I think, is that the word religion itself means religament, reconnect, bringing things connected again. And one of our challenges in the world of religion is that we're trying to restore loyalty. Now, what tends to happen is first restoring loyalty to God, restoring loyalty to our neighbor, restoring loyalty to the various parts of ourselves. But then there's the whole problem of restoring loyalty to larger communities. And then, how about this, restoring loyalty between religions? And then comes the ultimate, restoring loyalty to the whole planet. And so Whitehead's, I think, statement is being used to open up this idea that religion is not irrelevant to the challenges, the ecological challenges we face. It's actually deeply integral to these challenges. And that's especially important because a whole lot of people who see the gravity of the problems we face look at religion and just say, religion struck out a long time ago. It has nothing to offer. And so Tripp and I are leading a section that's specifically looking at Christianity and helping, and we're going to be engaging in conversation with all the participants about ways that Christianity is being converted to an ecological way of thinking, and about ways that Christianity is rediscovering a way of life that really could contribute to ecological civilization. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. I want to go back to something you said earlier that piqued my interest. When I get to talk with you, I try not to bring up books from too many books ago. I try and talk about what you're currently working on or touring with. But you brought it up. Everything Must Change is one of the most important books I read in when I was in seminary, and it was mind expanding how big the problem was and how consequential it was. And one of the things you talk about is the suicide machine. And the machine analogy always catches my attention because you think about these interlocking gears. They almost work on their own, and they propel each other forward. And so earlier you had said that you have ecology and economy, which are interconnected, and then we would say also theology. So I was just hoping maybe you could reach back into your memory of Everything Must Change and talk to us about that suicide machine and specifically that machine analogy and the gears and the way they push each other.
Sure. Oh gosh, I love talking about that. I would say, I'm glad to know that book had an impact on you. I would say writing it had the biggest impact on me. And when I started trying to understand global crises, though, the first crisis that it hit me in a very obvious way was the fact that human beings reached a tipping point. I mean, in one sense, it probably happened in my lifetime. Sometime around 1980, the total impact of human beings on the planet reached this point of unsustainability. We were pumping out toxins and other chemicals and wastes faster than the planet could absorb them, whether we were pumping them into oceans, the air, land, groundwater, and so on. And we were sucking out resources faster than the planet could replenish them. That, obvious example, when you catch more fish than can be, than can reproduce, your total fish stocks go down. And so that's this first crisis. It's the ecological crisis. I call it the crisis of the planet. Now, the reason we're doing that is not just because of the size of our population. It's because of the way we live, meaning we live lives that are dependent on sucking fossil fuels out of the ground and sucking, fish out of the sea and sucking nutrients out of the soil. And so, we basically created this giant suck on the planet. But here's the irony, and this is the second of the gears that kind of fits together. It's really about a third of the world's population that's creating the problem. In other words, a third of us are creating more problems than the other 2/3 put together. And when you start paying attention to the unequal consumption of resources and unequal production of wastes, you then realize that this problem of inequality that I think is going to get on our political agenda in the next election cycle is a really, really big deal. And here's a way to say it. Our economic systems, nobody has to do anything with any bad intent. Our economic systems are making a very small number of people get richer and richer and richer and richer, no matter what they do, and a very large number of people, no matter how they work, no matter how hard they work, they stay at the bottom. So I call that the crisis of poverty. It's really a crisis of inequality. And then when you take those first two crises of unstable environment and then gross inequality among people, you set the stage for all kinds of other problems: war, mass migration, organized crime, petty crime. And let's call that the crisis of peace, because when everybody is stressed in these other ways, the likelihood that somebody's going to press a button to drop a nuclear bomb or do another act of terrorism or whatever else, that kind of stress is going to produce that. So those are the three big gears that I talked about in the book. And add to that then, why aren't we addressing those big issues? Why are all of our political debates about secondary or things of minor importance? And then you have to say, oh, we have a deeper problem, and I call that the crisis of spirituality. That we our religious communities are not telling a story that sends us into the world in a healthy and productive way. So nobody needs to read the book now; they just got the big idea. But that's the problem. That's as I understand it.
So when you and Tripp are putting together this track here inside the section, what are you hoping comes out of these generative conversations? What's kind of bringing you out to participate in? When you think about this, what are you hoping for?
Well, so there are a whole lot of different reasons why people will choose different tracks, but we think a lot of people who are committed Christians, they might be evangelical, they might be Protestant, they might be Catholic or another form of Christian. But if they're especially interested in the ways that Christian communities, Christian theologians, Christian institutions are part of the problem and can become part of the solution, we hope they'll be part of our gathering. And we want to be very interactive in our sessions. In other words, people are going to be hearing plenary sessions from world-class speakers. And so rather than adding to already full brains of lectures, we're going to do a lot of processing, and our time together is going to be highly interactive. So I would especially say about anybody who's in Southern California, if they can get free those days, this is one not to miss. I mean, this is an important one, and people becoming literally from all over the world as well to be part of it.
Yeah, it would be great if we could get as many people there as possible. It's actually pretty affordable. So the 4-day conference is $300 for full everything conference access, and then there's a Saturday package for $29, and that's going to be an interesting day for two reasons. Number one is we're doing a live podcast that night, as I understand it, and so that would be a fun thing. If deacons have that Saturday off, they could drive in and hang out with us on Saturday night, and we're going to have a good time. The other thing that really intrigued me as I looked at this is John Cobb is going to revisit his 1976 question, is it too late? And the reason that caught my attention is, I don't know if you know this, last year I did a series, a 6-part series called Homegrown Christianity, where I talk to people who really care about ecological and theological issues. And at the end of each episode, I would ask them, John Cobb asked in 1976, is it too late? What do you say? It's like so many years later. What do you say? And the answers were really varied.
Yeah.
But the fact that John Cobb himself is going to revisit that question, I absolutely want to be there for that.
Yeah, exactly right. I speak at all kinds of things, but this is one I've really been looking forward to. And, the timing is amazing because here we'll be together at the beginning of June. Then in July, the Pope is going to issue an encyclical about the environment, which I think is going to be phenomenally significant. And then you may have heard that in September, the Pope is actually going to come to the United States and speak to a joint session of Congress about the environment. And our Congress is filled with climate change deniers. It's filled with people whose behavior is idiotic and immoral and stupid and inexcusable. And I just hope the Pope takes them to the woodshed and uses every ounce of his moral authority to apply his papal shoe to their congressional backsides. And these next few months, this could be the beginning of a real turning of the tide, so to speak. So that's another reason I'm so excited about this gathering next month.
That sounds amazing. Now, Brian, you used to live just outside Washington, D.C., so I can tell by the passion in your voice you have a dog in this fight. But I don't know if you heard, but it snowed this year in Washington, D.C., and if you can bring a snowball into the chamber, that disproves climate change, man.
A case in point for a word like idiocy. Oh, my God.
That was one of the funniest and saddest things I have ever seen.
You can't imagine, you can't decide which is worse. Are our political leaders actually that asinine? I mean, simpletons, fools. Are they that stupid, or are they that corrupt and that beholden to the fossil fuel industry and to a certain mythology that they know their base wants to hear? I mean, either choice is pretty depressing, which is why, thank God, we need the Pope and everybody else we can to try to talk some sense to them.
Yeah. Hey, the other thing I wanted to mention is that this is being hosted at Claremont, and you are on the board of directors, right?
I actually just finished my term.
Okay. And
but I'm still a deep and good friend of Claremont.
Yeah. And Claremont is in the process of talking through if they're going to distance themselves from fossil fuels.
Yeah.
And as many schools around the country are considering doing.
Yes.
And that's an exciting thing. But the other thing Claremont brings to the table is that it is interreligious.
Yes.
And this conference, like Claremont, is interreligious. When you see the names of who will be speaking and especially the keynote sessions, it is people literally coming from all over the world and representing every tradition and faith community you could possibly imagine. It is one of the most diverse things I have ever seen. Yeah.
Yeah, it's remarkable. It's remarkable. And of course that is as it has to be. This is almost a cliche, but we talk about when a big crisis happens, people get together. When I used to live in the DC area and we'd have a big blizzard, everybody'd be out and they'd help shovel each other's driveways, and people would get out and help each other. And after a tornado or some other terrible disaster, people come together. Well, we've got a disaster, brewing, a self-created disaster, and it's an all hands on deck situation. So those of us who are Christians, when you think that about a third of the world's population has some affiliation with the Christian faith, we have a big responsibility. But 24% of the world are affiliated with Islam. We can't solve the ecological problems we face without Christians and Muslims working together. And then Hindus represent 17% of the world's population. They have a very, very important role to play, especially because of just the huge population. India will surpass China before too long in population. And then about 17% of the world's population, same size as Hinduism, are non-religious. So we have to find ways to bring, the religious majority and the non-religious minority together. So everybody has a role to play, and we need all the help we can get. And the fact is, in just about every religion, there are what I call weapons of mass distraction, meaning there are elements in the religion that keep people that keep people out of the game from being actively involved in the kind of work that we need. But there are also growing numbers within each religion that are getting involved. So that's the kind of thing that we're hoping this event foments.
Yeah, let me just read some of the names that they have put forward as keynote speakers, and then I picked out a couple that have been on the podcast so that our listeners will have some familiarity. But let me just read some of the people who are going to be speaking. Bill McKibben, who puts an extra A in Earth, and I think that's a really interesting move. But Vandana Shiva, Cherie Liao, John B. Cobb, Herman Daly, Wes Jackson, David Griffith is coming down. We're excited about that. But we've also got, obviously, Philip Clayton, Jörg Rieger, and Catherine Keller, our newest JC, who we evangelize for. Just Catherine. So, yeah, it's going to be a star-studded thing as far as the keynotes go. But like you said, it's those conversations in the tracks within the sections that are going to be so vital.
Yeah. Yep.
Hey, before I let you go, I'm curious. I haven't gotten a chance to talk to you since your newest book came out. We Make the Road by Walking. And I can always gauge how popular a book is by how many people in my family or my former congregations talk to me about it.
Yeah.
And I am really pleased with what I'm hearing from those who are closest to me that have taken the time, they've gotten your book, and they're often reading it in either as a team with somebody else or in a group. And I haven't had a chance to talk to you about that book yet. So as we talked about other religions and this ecological crisis, I just wanted to ask you, how is your book being received, and what kind of conversations are you finding are coming out of it?
Well, the book came out about a year ago, and in fact, the softcover version will come out right about the time of the conference next month. And I'm really pleased. You people often ask which is your favorite book, and I always say, well, it's my most recent one. It's always my favorite. But We Make the Road by Walking was a kind of a milestone in my own work, because what I wanted to do is try to give a fresh introduction to the whole shebang, kind of a big picture of the Christian faith, by trying to give an overview, a reading of the entire Bible from Genesis to Revelation. So the way I decided to do that was through 52 short chapters, which obviously should make people think of 52 weeks. And each chapter can be read aloud in about 10 minutes. So obviously people can read it quietly on their own, but what I was really hoping would happen is that people would get together in a group, and I have a little one-year lectionary. In other words, a kind of a selection of Bible readings that are divided up among the 52 chapters. So people could read a couple passages from the Bible, read the chapter, and then each chapter has 6 discussion questions so that they can talk about it. And so that's what I was hoping. I was fortunate enough while I was writing the book to have a couple friends who field tested it with me. So one friend actually started a new congregation using the book as their curriculum, and another was a small group leader. And so we got to field test it as I was writing the book. But since the book came out, it has gone way better than even the field testing led me to expect. And So we have whole congregations that are using it. We have churches that are using it, and then they're developing kids curriculum based around it. And so I just couldn't be more thrilled with how that's going. And what people are telling me, and actually this is maybe how it relates to our discussion about the Seizing an Alternative conference, is that it's helping people see stuff that's been there in the Bible all along, but we've been so well trained to avoid, issues of justice and equality and environmental responsibility and so on. So I'm really, really happy with the impact of the book, and I'm hoping that the first kind of the group that used it for the first year is now at a place where they can recommend it to other people, and so I'm hoping next year it will go farther.
Well, that's great. And whenever I have family members or close friends who ask me about a book and if I've read it yet, and I always ask them what they're getting out of it. People really like the format of this book, but it's actually causing them to think about things they just haven't thought of before. And not like everything has changed where it's a totally new topic, like, ecological and economic interlocking gears. It's something they think about all the time, which is the Christian faith and the Christian Bible. And for them to be challenged in that area, it must be doing pretty good. I'm looking forward to talking with you more about it.
Oh, thanks, Bill. Thanks.
Thanks for taking the time with us today. It's always great to talk with you, and I am looking forward to seeing you in a couple weeks at the conference for Seizing an Alternative. If anybody has any questions for Brian or about the conference, feel free to go to homebrewedchristianity.com and use the speak pipe on the right-hand side. And we're going to be in contact with Brian in the build-up to the conference, and so we can get a response from him if you have any questions about something you heard today or want to pursue it more. Thanks, Brian.
Thank you, Bo. And it's always a pleasure to be on, what's the name of this podcast again?
It's, I don't